Next up, we have two people in paradise. They come from Canada and moved to El Salvador after their bank accounts were closed due to the protests that were going on in Canada in 2022. So they found in Bitcoin a way to be free, and they've decided to come to Bitcoin country to be even more free. So next up, we have two people in paradise that are going to tell us what that is.
Test? Ah, there we go.
Hello, hello.
Okay.
Okay. Hello,
Okay.
everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for coming to our talk today.
Can you hear Jessica okay? Yeah?
Hello.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So, yes, we are Ryan and Jessica. We're two people in paradise. We have a little YouTube channel that's covering our experience here in El Salvador, covering the transformation of El Salvador into something else entirely. And in our presentation today, essentially what we want to say is thank God for Bitcoin, because without Bitcoin, I'm not sure what options we would have had in Canada. We had a plan, we had a dream, we were working hard, trying to get to that dream, trying to realize that dream, and yet everything came unraveled in 2021. And this is to show you the story of how the orange pill went down our throats, dissolved in our bellies, and ripped us out of that matrix to land us here in El Salvador. So it all started in 2020. So Jessica has a congenital heart condition that makes her vulnerable to SARS-CoV type viruses. And when COVID started, we were quite afraid that that could do something terrible to her. So Jessica's doctor agreed and issued her this note to put her off work. This was the beginning of everything changing in our lives. You can see here that this note expires on April 17th, but by that time, the whole country had shut down anyway. I was also put out of work. So we were scared. So back in those days, we accepted authority as the truth. And the authority was telling us that this is a terrifying virus, it will kill you, you better get away, stay away from people, don't trust the people on the internet, that's for sure. And we took that seriously. We decided that we were going to retreat. This pin here is Port Blandford, Newfoundland. It's a remote community on a remote island all the way out in the North Atlantic Ocean. If you want to escape a pandemic and the possible end of civilization, that's a good place to go. We found this little bit of cabins called By the Bay cabins, way out in the wilderness in Newfoundland. Here's where we stayed. For 3 months, we stayed in this cabin. tiny little space. We had our groceries delivered by the grocery store, and I stood right here with a bottle of alcohol and a rag, swabbing everything down. I look back on that, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? It's ridiculous, right? But that's what I did. This is the interior of the cabin here. We spent many, many hours on this couch and chair. And that gives you time to think about things. It gives you time to reflect on the information that you're getting and verify its authenticity, right? We had many long conversations, and the government was saying 10% death rate. It was saying high chance of long-term complications, lung damage, affecting your life for the rest of your life. But as time went on, those numbers started to change. From 10% death rate, it went down to 1%, to 0.1%. And as the virus became less and less threatening, we observed as the government's response to the virus became more and more extreme. So what started to happen was we observed attacks on our Canadian identity. And one such example is that ice skating on a pond. That is a classic Canadian thing. It's a tradition. It's part of what makes us who we are. And from this chair, from this couch, we watched as Canadians, oops, went too far. As Canadians, young Canadians, were arrested, manhandled, for skating on a pond.
Alone.
Alone, yeah, exactly. So something was changing. We were starting to feel like our Canadianness was starting to slip here. As time went on, we saw even more things. There were, in Montreal, for example, police entering people's homes on a tip from the neighbor who had reported that they had an unauthorized guest in their home. So this is an offense to our dignity, right? You have, a part of your dignity is to be able to socialize with your friends, to see your family, right? And the police were coming in and saying, no, you can't do that. We're the authority, and we decide what matters. So we watched all this happen here from these two chairs in that cabin. But what was most worrying of all for us, and this is when things really started to accelerate, was when the Canada Emergency Response Benefit was announced. This was $2,000 per month sprayed into the economy to every Canadian who was sitting at home, adding nothing to the economy. No productivity, no economic output at all. $2,000 going right into the pockets of retail consumers. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we had at the time this nest egg, this dream to build a home, to buy a piece of land in Nova Scotia, build a home. And we saw that that little bit of savings that we had accumulated, working so hard for so long, 6 years we had been working at that point, we saw that that was under threat, that it was about to be debased under inflation, the inevitable inflation that was going to come from this. I was thinking a lot about Milton Friedman and his statement. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. You guys are Bitcoiners, you know this. It can only be produced by a more rapid increase in supply of money than in economic output. It was weighing very heavily on our minds. We had worked, as I said, we had worked so long and so hard. I used to spend 15 hours a day in the middle of nowhere on a road crew, digging ditches, putting in culverts. Jessica, in addition to her full-time job, had her own business back home while we were away. I was away. We were working our teeth to the bone, working ourselves to the bone.
Teeth are bone.
Yeah, right? And we saw that that was under threat. That was going to go. We were going to lose the productivity that we had put in, the proof of work that we had put in. We were going to lose the merit of that, the rewards of that were under threat. Milton Friedman, weighing heavily on our minds. So, we pressed on, and we talked. Jessica came up with this. We had many, many conversations. We talked about gold, we talked about silver, we talked about oddball ideas like buying stamps and rare comic books, something that could conserve our wealth as the Canadian dollar deteriorated, right? And it was Jessica who said,
What about Bitcoin?
She suggested it. I had heard about Bitcoin years and years ago, way back in 2010. I'd heard about it. I saw it on the internet, and I thought, oh, that's cool. Rage Against the Machine, awesome, right. And I forgot about it. Didn't think about it again until this moment. But I looked it up, and I saw, wow, if there's ever been an inflation hedge, this is it. And so we made the decision. Right there in that cabin, we made our first successful purchase of Bitcoin. This is $100. Purchased on a Canadian exchange. At this point, we didn't know anything about self-custody. We didn't know anything about the liberating power of Bitcoin. We didn't know about proof of work and verification, don't trust, verify. We didn't know anything about that. We just knew we wanted to protect our savings. And it worked. It worked. It protected our savings. But the economic headwinds that we had foreseen in Canada would be nothing compared to the the cultural, the social, and indeed the moral headwinds that Canada was about to face. And to illustrate that, we have a short video for you.
Say hi, Ryan. It's a little loud. Okay. And what we worked at today was clearing out this right here. Whole pathway. I think he's thinking that the house is going to go here, which I'm cool with. Got all the stumps, all the logs. And we still got a lot of work to do, but we'll get it done in time.
Accounts have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen.
The small fringe minority of people who hold it unacceptable, the views do not represent the views of Canadians.
In that world, authority is the truth. And that's what happens. I want you to imagine with me sitting in your bedroom watching on a live stream this scene while you have no access to your bank account. You can't pay your rent. You can't pay your power bill. You can't top up your phone. You can't put gas in the car. You can't put food in the fridge. How do you feel? These people were standing up and saying, you know what, truth is the authority, not authority is truth. And we were watching as our dream was unraveling. The Canadian dream was unraveling underneath us. But thank God for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin gave us an alternative. We had that Bitcoin, that inflation hedge that we had done back in 2021. We had that. Now, you can't use it in Canada. There's nowhere you can spend it, but we had it. We had an option. We had an escape hatch. So we made the decision. We weren't going to let these two dictate the course of our lives. And we weren't going to let this culture decide what we would think and what we would believe. Had we not purchased Bitcoin back then, I don't know that we would have made that choice. This is Gerald Massey. Indeed, they do find it difficult. Canada is in quite a state, but I won't get into that. We made the decision to leave. We got on the plane. And while we felt forced out, and we felt like we had no other choice, that doesn't mean it was an easy decision. It was a very painful decision. I remember the first conversation we had about that, and I said, hey, I think it's time to go.
And I immediately said, not on your life. But that, I believe, is only because where I grew up in Newfoundland, as you've seen on the screen, a small remote island that nobody ever leaves. You think about going to the mainland, going to Alberta, and it's just like you go there for work, but you always return home. So the thought of having to pack up everything was terrifying. It's not an easy decision by far, and it was almost as if like everything we ever worked for, it's like when you're walking on a stable bridge, which you think is stable, and then that one crack, and before you know it, you're in the river drowning. So we had to make the move, and we didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't know if we were going to sink or swim at that moment. We had to say goodbye to our families, which could potentially have been for the last time. Who knows? Which is a very terrifying aspect. Our dream of building a house, you've seen the property here today, it was gone. And the most difficult thing about it was, it felt like we didn't have a choice. It felt like the government of Canada was just pulling the rug from underneath our feet. So.
Yeah, leaving family behind. Family. Jessica has an enormous family, many, many sisters, many nephews. I had been getting close to them. I have a sister. Really quickly, my sister and I were separated at birth. She was given up for adoption just before I was born. I was kept. And I didn't meet her till I was 32 years old. And so I didn't have time to form a relationship with her. And when she finally appeared in our lives, she had reached out. I thought, I can have a chance to know my sister. Amazing. But I had to give that up, because I would not live in that sort of country where they can take away everything you've worked for with the push of a button. My dignity is paramount. I miss her so much. And as an aside, she's thinking about coming, so it's not all bad. But
We're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it, yeah. But yes, so it wasn't an easy decision, but we're so glad that we made that decision. And it almost didn't happen. We had a moment in the Miami airport on the last connecting flight to San Salvador where it was hitting, it was becoming real, and it was starting to become like a panic kind of moment. And I said to you, I said, look, if you want to turn around right now and just go to the counter, get on a plane back to Canada and just forget about this whole thing, we can do that. We have that option. And we sat in silence for a good 20 minutes and decided no, we were going to follow through on this. And it's so good that we followed through on this, because the life we have here in El Salvador is not only free from the nightmare we were living in Canada, it is so much more. We didn't realize how much we were missing in Canada until we came here to El Salvador. This is an example. This is a group of friends that we have. We were just gathered for a birthday party, right? Something you do anywhere, right? But here, we could speak our minds to these folks. We could be genuine. We could be authentic about who we are and what we believe, and we could have real conversations. You can't do that so much back in Canada anymore, because if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you're going to lose your job, or you'll lose your apartment, because someone's going to call your boss, they're going to call your landlord and try to ruin your life for having the wrong opinion. You see, it's not just top down, it's bottom up in Canada too. Next slide. Yep, here we go. Birthday party at our house. These are the daughters of some of our closest friends. These are not experiences we were having in Canada. And we also are making connections with the locals. Like, this country is a place where you can approach anybody and they'll receive you like family. We had never had that experience before, and we didn't know how much we were missing it. You know, this is a driver who we met, and he became a friend on a drive, right? We don't even speak the same language, and we're forming connections that are stronger and more genuine than we ever formed in Canada before. It's remarkable. More than that, if you are thinking about moving to El Salvador, you also have options if you want to add something of value to this country and to this community. There are so many opportunities, and no one is standing in your way. This is a talk I gave at a school, and a Bitcoin diploma graduation that we attended. It's, if you want to do something to add meaning and value to this country, you can do that. We didn't have that option in Canada, so we're so glad that we came here. Yeah. And this is what it boils down to. Back home, authority is the truth. Your time and energy are just a small part of the collective. And because of that, your life, which is your time and is your energy, doesn't really have any value. And it ultimately belongs to the state. If you fall out of alignment with the state will just flick off your economic life. They'll just shut you down. And they will force you, they will apply force to get you to comply. Here, a new experiment in society is unfolding. Truth is the authority. Your time and energy belong to you via Bitcoin. And because of that, your life is rare and precious. It has value. You can add that value to your community, and how you do that is exclusively up to you, to only you. So thank God for Bitcoin, because had we stayed in Canada, or had we not encountered Bitcoin in 2021 and picked it up as an inflation hedge, it's not unrealistic to say that we, like so many other Canadians, would end up in a place like this. These are not homeless people. They're not drug addicts. They're not crazy people. This is a 2-minute drive from where we used to live. And these people in the morning, they unzip their flaps and they go to work. They can't afford to live. And they have no control over their lives. Instead, thanks to Bitcoin, thanks to Nayib Bukele, this is how we live. It's our backyard. That's our little dog.
That's Doggo. His name's Asik.
His name is Asik. We named him after a miner, yeah. So if you're in a position back home where you feel like your dignity is not being respected, where your time and energy is not being treated as the rare and precious commodity as it is, I implore you, make that the most important thing. Insist upon it. Insist upon the truth of your life, your values, your beliefs, and go somewhere where that is treated properly. Don't be afraid. Have the courage. We went through it, we made it, and we're so glad we did. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we have time for questions? Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Yeah. How much time do we have? 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Okay, questions.
Wow. Yes. Dan, go ahead. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So the question is, how do we sustain ourselves? How do we earn our Bitcoin? Yes. When we came here, we arrived on a single income of $15 per hour. It was an online income with a call center and we just took that job because it was remote and it enabled us to work anywhere. That's the only reason we took it. $15 Canadian per hour, which is only about 12 something US. That's what we arrived here with. We knew that wasn't going to be enough. That wouldn't be enough to get us moving forward. But this is a country where word of mouth is everything and community is everything. We just started talking to people, saying, hey, we need work. We need more. Here's our skill set. Here's our talent. One connection leads to another, leads to another. We were eventually connected with someone who's in this room, actually, and they brought us aboard. and gave us an opportunity. And we've been doing that now for almost a year. And they are gracious enough to pay us directly in Bitcoin. So really, we've realized that dream just by having faith that we could.
Who's next?
Any more questions? I saw another hand up earlier. Yes?
What is the culture of men and women down here? I mean, is this a marriage culture or is it a divorce culture like you have? Because you cannot maintain a civilized society if your women are feral and degenerate like they are in America and the U.S. And I have to say, out of all the Spanish-speaking countries I've been to, this looks like the best one.
Interesting, yeah. So the question for those who couldn't hear was, everyone heard.
Yeah,
So
everyone heard.
do you want to field this one, or do you have thoughts on marriage? We're
Our
already
marriage
married,
is
everyone.
great.
Yeah.
No, I think, to be honest, if she doesn't mind coming up and answering the question, Sandy would know. She's Salvadorian, and she has...
Okay, no, she doesn't
No?
want to get on
Okay.
stage. Yeah.
Because we
So-
don't really know.
Okay. Are we out of time? I'll answer the question, and then that'll be it. Okay, so our impression is that this is a country where family values are pretty high priority.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the, like,
It's one of the
sparkly
reasons.
points of why we wanted to come here,
Yes. Yeah.
amongst other things.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, maybe speak to our good friend Sandy here. She can tell you all about the culture and history here. Excellent. Okay, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much,
Yes,
everybody.
thank you very much for coming.
Be brave.
I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.